Good morning or afternoon, everybody. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes for people to fill in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Good morning and afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started here as the last few guests trickle in. Uh, Today, we're going to cover Social Security and Medicare. A couple of housekeeping rules. First things first, the slides are going to be sent out to everybody afterwards, as well as a copy of the recording should be within probably about 24 hours. Feel free to share it amongst coworkers, friends, family. This is all perfectly fine to share in public information. But what we'll be covering today is Social Security and Medicare, essentially some of the basics, but then also some of the things to look out for and the things that you need to be prepared for so that you can make the best decision for yourself or yourself and your family. There is a Q&A box as well, so please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation. I will stick around at the end and make sure that I can answer as many of those as I can, at least those that apply to the general masses. If you have more specific questions, there is going to be an option where you could actually talk with one of our advisors and actually get some guidance on a specific question. So without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. And again, for any of those who just joined, I think there's about 20 or so that just trickled in. We will be sending out the slides in the present PowerPoint recording afterwards. A little bit about myself. I'm a chartered mutual fund counselor as well as a federal employee benefits specialist. I have over 10 years of experience doing financial planning specifically for federal employees. Purpose of today's seminar is to give you a clear understanding of how your federal benefits relate to outside financial planning and retirement planning strategies. And today we're going to cover a lot of that in relation to Social Security, Medicare, tax implications, and Medicare premium implications of that. So let's go ahead and get started with the Social Security piece. A couple things to know is first, when are you eligible? When is your full age? So it really depends on when you were born. For most of us on the line here, it's probably going to be 67. Any of you born between 54 and 59, it's going to be probably a factor of months. And in order to be eligible, you would need 40 quarters of coverage or 40 quarters where you worked for an employer where you were paying into Social Security. As far as benefits go, you are able to take it as early as 62. However, you are going to be penalized in the benefit that you receive if you take it earlier. If your full retirement age was 66, meaning that was you were born before 1954, it's a 75% reduction If you were born after that, and especially 1960 or after, then it's going to be a 30% reduction, right? You're going to get 70% of that benefit if you take it what they call early, which would be anything before your full retirement age. In addition to this, if you do take it early, there's a earnings limitation. You are limited in how much money you can earn from things like salary, tips, commission, and wages to 21,240. At least that was the limit for 2023. And you can't earn above that. In addition, in the year that you turn your full retirement age, there is a earnings limitation, which is 56,520. You can't earn above that, or else your benefit will be reduced proportionately above what you earn. So in short, you pretty much want to take Social Security when you don't plan to really earn any more income or much income. Now, as a federal employee, you might have a question about your pension. Your pension for this purpose does not count as earned income and does not count against you. Uh, After your full retirement age, there is an additional benefit to wait. Your Social Security will grow by 8% per year that you wait up till 70, at which point it will no longer increase. So 70 is going to be the latest that you can claim Social Security. So let's kind of take a look at an example, full range chart. Now we're going to assume that somebody has a full retirement age here of 67, and we're going to look at what is the penalty or the benefit in you taking it earlier versus waiting. As you can see at 62, it's a 30% penalty. But a lot of people actually surprisingly don't know you can take Social Security any year between 62 and 70. It's not just 62 full age and 70 like what you see on your statement. And they've actually kind of revised those statements more recently to kind of show a year by year and what you would collect. But the bulk of people are going to be looking at taking it at their full retirement age, which is, again, 66 in so many months or 67, depending when you were born. And the other thing that's important to know is they do not automatically file for you at 70. You will need to still go do that yourself, even though that's the latest you can collect. And if you had forgot, and let's say that you're 71 or 72, they will retroactively send you the money that you missed. Just that would increase your taxable income in one given year, which would be something to look out for. As far as when should you take it, get this question all the time. And the truth is, it depends. It depends on your own health, on your family history, and essentially you're trying to make an educated guess on how long you might live. Now, using that information, right? How long did your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, how long did they live? What kind of health conditions do they have? You can use that coupled with this to make a decision for what's right for you. So for somebody who files early, right, that's going to be at 62, and that's going to be this red line right here. And if they took all the money that they received from Social Security and put it in a bank account, right? And then another person, the same, let's say an identical clone of them, took it at 67 and they did the same thing. They took it all and they put it in a bank account. And we look at when would those two bank accounts have the same amount of money? And the answer to that is going to be 78. 78 is going to be your break even age for when you would have the same amount of Social Security collected. Now, this, of course, is assuming that you're going to spend all of your Social Security income, which for most of us on the line is probably going to be true, right? In addition to your pension, you're probably going to spend your Social Security. And then above that, maybe even dip into your TSP, right? Or your retirement accounts a little bit as well. So we are operating under the assumption that you are spending everything. If you were to not be spending everything, taking Social Security earlier could be more beneficial for you. Now, going off of the same example, but taking it a step further, right? And that step further, what we're going to look at is what if you took it at 67 versus 70, and that's going to intersect here at 83. So 83 is going to be your break-even point for when you would have finally started to benefit by waiting until 70 versus taking it earlier. So you can use this information, right, coupled with your family history and your health to determine, is living past 83 very reasonable for you, where your parents, grandparents, et cetera, living in their, upper 80s, 90s, or even hundreds, or was it more 60s and 70s where you might want to maybe take it a little earlier? So those are a couple of the factors that you want to factor in. And I just got a question, so I'll just kind of repeat this real quickly. Yes, the PowerPoint and the recording from today is going to be sent to all of you. You can expect to have those within 24 hours after the presentation. All right. So a couple things that I'm sure a lot of you have heard, and it's been the past 20 plus years, probably even longer than that, something that has always been talked about is Social Security is going to run out of money. Well, what are they going to do? When are they going to run out? And this has been an ongoing debate for quite some time. And they did make some pretty impactful changes back in, I believe it was 2016 or 17, where they got rid of a lot of the maximization techniques. In fact, we used to have a whole other presentation just on the maximization methods that somebody could do, jumping back and forth from them and their spouses. And that has essentially all but gone away. So right now, only 76% of benefits will have funding starting in 2034. And there have been talks of a couple of changes. One of them, as a potential, would be a immediate reduction in benefits needed to guarantee funding, or what is probably a more realistic thing is a reduction in the future for retirees. Now, my personal opinion is even further than essentially this article from CNBC, is that they are much more likely to change the benefit for those who are younger, those who have enough time before retirement to plan this and make changes to their retirement plans to incorporate this into it. The last time Social Security had an impact to the benefits, it was a 5% reduction in benefit. So it was not something so significant and meaningful like a 20 or 25% cut would be. There's also potential that they would get rid of certain things like a spousal or survivor benefit or limit what those are. And that's something that we're going to cover a little bit later into the presentation. So to kind of move forward here, Social Security shortfall. So let's kind of pretend, right, that you had a $2,500 a month benefit in retirement, and they move forward with the 25% reduction plan, meaning that they would make a change this year. You'd be looking at a new monthly payment instead of 2,500 going down to 1,875, right? That's going to be a $625 a month reduction, or 7,500 per year. So as you can tell, this would be pretty impactful. And the way that you would plan around this is not that you would just necessarily go to try and take Social Security early because you're concerned that it's going to run out, but you need to make sure that you're focused in your other areas, specifically with your portfolio and the way that you're investing, because your federal pension also falls a little bit short of inflation. So you'll need your portfolio to help make up for future Social Security changes and the lack of keeping up with inflation from your pension. I see a few questions rolling in, and it looks like a couple of them are a little bit more specific. I'm going to try and save these to the end just so we can stay with the train of thought here. And then I'm going to come back at the end and I'm going to sit here and kind of take all these questions and answer them. So the next question is, or topic really, is spousal benefits. All right. If a spouse delays their Social Security until full age, they are able to take a 50% benefit off of your record. So let's pretend that, you're earning some good income, and let's pretend that your spouse is a stay-at-home parent or they aren't earning very much. They are able to, at their full retirement age, again, probably 67, they're able to get half of your Social Security without it affecting yours at all. So if you have a $3,000 benefit, they can get $1,500 a month when they turn 67, and you at 67 can collect 3,000. So your household would collect 4,500, even though your spouse didn't work that long or make any income whatsoever, they're still eligible for that. If your spouse was to start it earlier, then they are able to, at 62, collect 35% of your benefit. And then in case there is any CSRS on the line, I think most of you all have retired at this point, but just in case, there is the government pension offset, which was created for this. But in most cases, that will be a very low amount that would be received. So kind of, again, coming back to that example here, if the primary Social Security participant has 2,000 a month, their spouse at full age can get 1,000, and their spouse at 62 will get 35% of that, or that would be 700. So let's kind of look at who's eligible, right? So we're going to kind of take a little shift here from a spouse, and we're going to talk about a survivor, right? So if one spouse was to pass away before the other spouse. So a surviving spouse is eligible as long as they had been married for at least 9 months. And they cannot remarry before the age of 60. And what will happen is they can collect the monthly benefit as early as 60. So not 62, they can collect it as early as 60. And if they're disabled, it could be as early as 50, or if they're caring for a child of the deceased spouse who's under 16, then they can collect it at any age. So a few stipulations here. Odds are that you may not find yourself in that kind of case, where really you're just kind of looking at collecting it at 60. And the other thing is, if this were to happen, you are also able to then switch from the deceased spouse's Social Security to your own at 70, which is a pretty common practice. So a couple of things with survivor benefit calculations. So if you apply for Social Security survivor benefits between 60 and your full age, you'll receive somewhere between 70 to 100% of the deceased spouse's benefit. And the amount scales up as you get closer and closer to your own full retirement. This would be considered early if it's before full retirement, so that earnings limitation does apply. And then there is a lump sum death benefit payout, pretty small, $255 at any age. Next piece here is going to be a divorced spouse. So for any of those who are divorced here, you or your former spouse could get benefits on an ex-spouse if the marriage lasted at least 10 years. In order to be able to collect the benefit, the divorced spouse must be 62 or older, and you must be unmarried. So if you remarry, that piece goes away. The amount of the benefit received has no effect on the benefit that your current spouse or that your former spouse would get. So if your former spouse is getting a benefit, just like with the spousal benefit, it's not going to affect their benefit at all. You just might be able to collect one off of their record or their criteria. So can you file for your Social Security at 62 and then switch to a spousal benefit later? So this is going off divorcees. And what this is essentially referring to is if you are the older of the two, meaning that you couldn't collect Social Security from your former spouse, yes, then you can. You are able to start your own at 62. And then once your spouse or former spouse was to file, then you are able to switch and start to get a payment essentially equal to the higher of the two benefits. Remember, from a spouse, it's going to be half of it, or depending on your age, but then you're going to be eligible to collect from that. And if you have any questions about this one, they're going to be a little bit more case specific. That's kind of why we offer that one-on-one where you can ask some more personal questions where we can tell you what it will be in your specific case. There are 3 exemptions to the deemed filing. These are going to be very circumstantial. Potentially not many of you on the line here, but if you were born before 1954 and January 2nd of that year, if you are caring for a child who's under 16 or disabled, and if you are eligible for Social Security disability benefits. So those are going to be the only exemptions to that case. So let's kind of look through a little example here of this. So we have a made-up case here, and we have John and Joyce. John is 66 and Joyce is 62. And we're going to give them a 90 age life expectancy. As you can see, they have a little bit of an age gap here. And John's full retirement benefit is going to be $2,000 a month. And for Joyce, it's going to be $900 a month. So how can they maximize their Social Security with the current laws out there for how you're able to maneuver your benefit? So number one, what we would do is we would want Joyce to start right away, right? So we would have Joyce start at 62 and take the 30% penalty on her own benefit, right? So in that case, what's going to happen is she's going to collect 70% of the 900, which would be 630 a month. Then what's going to happen is John, who has delayed his Social Security, starts at 70. At this point, Joyce would be 66. And at that point, just like we mentioned earlier with the case starting at 62, Joyce is going to go ahead and collect a spousal benefit, which is going to be 35%, because remember, she filed at 62. So it's going to be 35% of John's amount. Not a very big increase, right? But an extra $70 a month in benefit. Then, unfortunately, John passes at 90. And as a survivor, Joyce is able to either continue with her 700, or she can switch to John's benefit at his full retirement age. So even though John delayed until 70, Joyce isn't going to get the amount that John got at 70. She's going to get the amount that John got at 60, at his full age, 67. So in this case, she's going to go ahead and collect $2,000 a month when John may pass. So about $1,100 of that, $1,180 of that income will disappear. However, she is able to collect a bigger benefit than maintaining her own. So this is kind of a case of what this would look like. And really, this is something important for your own situations to understand for retirement so that you can plan. And essentially the risk in your portfolio and when you take Social Security and a lot of these different things are derived off of what this long-term picture looks like. More importantly, for those of you who are married, that's where you're going to have a little bit more intricacy to some of those decisions. For those of you who are single filers or head of household, it's going to be a little bit easier to make that decision, but there's definitely still some planning involved in that piece. Couple other points to mention on Social Security is the disability. The disability must be expected to last at least 12 months, and the waiting period for eligibility is 5 months. So you need to wait 5 months. You need to expect it to last at least 12 months in total before you will really receive anything from that. So if it's a shorter term thing, you might not even get to see any of that benefit. And essentially, you must be unable to earn an income greater than $1,000 per month. So it's going to be a little tough on that front, but it's just something to be aware of. The other kind of feedback that we'll have on Social Security is you want to double check your earnings record. So this applies to everybody on the line here. It doesn't matter how old you are. You want to keep tabs on your yearly earnings from Social Security to make sure that they are accurately reporting your income each year. As a refresher, Social Security looks at your 35 highest years of income or earnings. And if you don't have 35 years, they'll replace whatever years you're short, but with a zero. But they have definitely had inaccuracies in reporting those earnings. So they've accumulated over 1.8 trillion in wages, which the administration can't match to any earnings record. So it would be, especially for those of you retiring soon, it would be a very good idea to go run through the list. You can compare it to maybe a W-2 or a tax return from the past to make sure that all those numbers jive year by year. And that way you can get a correction made well before you're ready to file for Social Security. So now we're going to jump over to Medicare. And then afterwards, we're going to run through a little bit more detailed scenario in why a lot of this planning is important. And then afterwards, we're going to jump over to Q&A. I will stick around a little bit longer to make sure that we're able to answer most all these questions coming in. So let's kind of jump into things on Medicare. So Medicare, it is federal health insurance for people 65 and older. You must have 40 credits or quarters of paying into it to be eligible, or under 65 and are considered disabled. And then spouses can qualify at 65 based on the other spouse's work record. Medicare is made up of 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. A and B are really going to be the 2 more important factors, and B is going to be the one that we have probably the most questions on, concerns about, and my job today is to try and give you a little bit more context around this decision. So first, Part A. Part A is free. It covers inpatient hospital care, hospital visits, home health care, meals, operating room, lab tests, etc. It's technically free, but it's because the premiums were already collected while you were working, right? About 1.45%. The first 60 days is covered by the deductible, and then co-insurance amounts would apply. Moving on to Part B. Part B is the tricky one. So Part B is essentially the healthcare that would become your primary, and your current federal healthcare plan would become secondary if you choose to take Part B. Part B is not something that you have to take unless you're on TRICARE. But if you're just on the Federal Employee Health Benefit, the FEHB plan, whether it's Blue Cross or Kaiser, or any of your other options, Part B is not required. And you'll want to double check with, if you have other plans, kind of what the stipulations are. But as far as Part B goes, there is a cost. There's a monthly premium each month depending upon your income. And the standard premium is $175, but it can go all the way up to $600 a month. So it can be pretty pricey. Not to mention you're still having your federal healthcare plan. If you do not sign up when you're first eligible, you will have a late enrollment penalty of 10% for every 12-month period that you don't enroll. Once you get to pretty much year 3 past enrollment, it really is just too expensive to probably even be worth it at that point. The initial enrollment is 7 months. So it starts from 3 months before the month you turn 65, and then 3 months after that month. So there's essentially a 7-month window to enroll. Now, one thing that's not on here, but for any of you who are retiring after 65, you have a 8-month window to enroll, even if you're past 65. So if you're 66, 67, but you're still working, you do not have to enroll for Part B, again, unless you're on TRICARE. But for those of you on the federal plan, they're not going to penalize you if you enroll after you have retired. And the same thing would apply for your spouse if they are also on your healthcare plan. So As I was just saying, do I pay a penalty if I'm 65 and still working? So the answer is no. As long as you are covered on the healthcare of your current employer, you do not have to. And if your spouse is on your healthcare plan, they don't have to. And then, as mentioned, you have 8 months to sign up for Medicare after you or your spouse stop working or lose group healthcare coverage. So, why would somebody choose Medicare Part B? Medicare would become your primary healthcare cost and would cover 80% of your costs. Your federal employee health benefit, FEHB, will become secondary and pays the rest. Your federal employee health benefit also offers something called a wraparound coverage, which means that when your Medicare premium is first, your federal healthcare plan will waive its deductibles, co-payments, and co-insurance, which would leave you with little to no out-of-pocket expense. In addition, you can get reimbursement when you have Medicare Part B from your federal healthcare plan. And then we have a couple examples here. Blue Cross Blue Shield gives back about 800 per year. Aetna gives back about 900 per year. So you'll want to double check when the time comes and what your plan offers or what they reimburse. So a little bit about income. I mentioned earlier that income matters for your Medicare premium. The other thing here is Medicare premiums are not based off your taxable income, like your tax brackets. It's based off your MAGI, your modified adjusted gross income. So in short, that's going to be your income before your deductions. So it's going to be the higher of the two. And when we look at this, you can see it is very doable to exceed these, different thresholds, right? For those of you who are joint, if you and your partner both earned a decent income, you're very likely to actually cross over that 206 at a future point in retirement. For those of you who are single or head of household filers, it's going to be a slightly earlier threshold. And that's something to be aware of because you're going to have pension, you're going to have Social Security. And the big one here is you're going to have something called an RMD, a required minimum distribution at 73 or 75, depending on when you were born. And we're going to get into that later. But it's good to know where you're going to be in these different brackets. Anybody who's going to be in the third, fourth, fifth, or even sixth bracket, which we didn't even list here, but anybody who's going to be in those higher brackets, it's probably not worth taking Medicare Part B if you're going to be in those higher brackets for most of retirement, unless you have a lot of major health concerns or a poor family history when it comes to health. That might be a consideration where you might actually consider paying that extra money. So how do they kind of look at this income? Well, they do something called the 2-year look back rule. So essentially what happens is Medicare is going to look at your income from 2 years ago. So somebody who is retired and turned 65 this year, right, in 2024, they're going to be looking at your income from your 2022 tax return to determine what your premium will be. So it can be rather expensive, and you might have even been working potentially when they do the 2-year look back, right? 2 years ago, perhaps you were still working at that point, and your income was higher than it is, at least initially, in retirement. So what can you do? You can actually appeal your Medicare premiums in the first couple of years. So essentially what you would kind of put in here is, hey, I had a life-changing event, right? I had a work reduction, right? Work stoppage in that case of retirement. If you got married, if you got divorced, if you lost a spouse, these are some things that you can apply to have your Medicare premium essentially adjusted. And this is on the slides that will be sent out. So for anybody where this, essentially pertains to you, or this is just something good to maybe store somewhere for your future records, it includes the form name on here, the SSA 44, and how you would go report that. So now we're going to get into a little bit of a scenario here. I kind of mentioned a little bit on required minimum distributions. I actually personally have an article that should be published any day now on GovExec about exactly this case with a little bit more context. But today I'm going to walk you guys through an example of RMDs and how they can impact your Medicare Part B premium. And depending on your own situation, this can be a game changer for whether or not it's worth it for you to take Part B or not, depending upon what your future scenario looks like. So first off, what is a RMD, required minimum distribution? It is a forced withdrawal from a retirement account, and I should say a pre-tax or traditional retirement account, depending upon when you were born. So first off, if you were born before 1950, you would already be taking a distribution. If you were born between 51 and 59, your required distribution age is going to be 73. And if you were born 1970 or later, it's going to be 75. Technically, your first distribution, they give you an extra 4 months before you need to collect it. However, your second one would be due December 31st of the same year. So essentially, you just want to take one distribution each year. They are not required by Roth accounts. Roth TSP, Roth 401ks, Roth IRAs, those do not have a required minimum distribution. And the issue with required distributions is they are taxed at ordinary income. And there is also a pretty severe penalty if you forget to take a distribution. There is a 25% penalty for failure to complete this. And this isn't a 1-year thing. This happens every year as long as you have any money in traditional. And that penalty actually just got cut in half. It used to, prior to 2022, it used to be a 50% penalty. So 25 is still very punishing, but a lot better than where it used to be. And the way that this distribution is calculated is using the IRS divisor table, which is essentially a table that gives you a life expectancy and tells you what percentage of your account you have to pull out each year. It is not the same percentage each year. As you age, you have to pull out a larger proportion of your account. So let's go through a little scenario here of what this could look like, right? So we have somebody whose Social Security age is 66, and they have a pension of 40K, and their Social Security at 66 is 35K. So they have a combined income of 75K, right? Their modified adjusted gross income is 75K, which would have their Medicare premium at $165 a month. Now, on the right here, we can see a little table. Actually, we should get rid of one of those ones. That should be 142K. And essentially, we have where they are in the bracket, right? They're in the lowest bracket right now. That income goes up to 91K before they would go into the second Medicare premium bracket. And they have between 75 and 91K, a $16,000 threshold, right? That is their cushion before they would go into the next Medicare premium bracket. So if we go ahead and let's get rid of that red there, and we take their portfolio, right? Let's pretend that they have 600K invested at 62, and that money is going to be growing, right, all the way up until they turn 73 when they have that required distribution. Now, we're going to be pretty conservative here, and we're going to assume that their account is only growing at 5% a year, right? Very obtainable. And at 73, that would mean that that portfolio would have grown from 600K to 800K. And what that would do at 800K is that would be a required distribution of $42,000. Now, where does this cause an issue is that $42,000 is completely taxable. It is added to the pension and the Social Security income, which means that not only did they go up at least one Medicare premium bracket, but actually two, right? Because they have between the 75K plus the 42K, right? They have 117K of income, which means that they're going to go from paying 165 a month to now paying $306 a month. And if they were married, that means that their spouse, if they were also on Medicare, would also have that same kind of bump, right, or increase. So what we're going to cover next is really what can you do to avoid that, right? Um, and that's really the main issue that essentially we see. So not only can the required distribution affect your Medicare premium bracket, but looking on the screen here, we have essentially a chart showing somebody's federal income tax bracket over time. And you can essentially see that this bracket is being jumped up at 73, right, up to what will be the 28% when they were at, the 15% earlier on. And when they were working, they were actually only at 22%. And at the very tail end of their life, they're also even being kicked up because of that distribution over time into the 33% bracket. So this is, really the big part of planning when it comes to, taxes, but also for, Medicare premiums, as we were just talking about. That required distribution is a huge piece that really needs to be planned for much, much earlier. And you can plan for this as early as your 20s. So for anybody who's younger, using the Roth TSP is going to be a big part. Anybody retired, 59 and a half or older, Roth conversions are going to be a huge part of looking to avoid this. So a couple other things on the tax bracket side in being kicked up is we have essentially a short window here where you can really benefit from the lower tax rates. We need to update this for 2024, but essentially the story here is the current tax rates that we have are going to expire in 2026. So December 31st, 2025, the current percentages, the 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, these are going to go away and they're going to go back to how they were prior to these 2018 tax law changes. So you're going to have the 10% will be the same, but the 12 goes to 15, the 22 goes to 25, the 24 goes to 28. So for most of us, right, that kind of fall in the middle of the range here, that's going to be a 3 to 4% increase in what you're paying in federal taxes. And we have this year and next year to kind of do things to avoid that. And using what I just showed about the Medicare premiums, you can start to avoid that from being such a big issue for you in the future. So there's probably a lot of questions, and I see about 20 questions I'm gonna go ahead and answer. But for things more specific, we do offer a complimentary one-on-one. This is not a sales meeting. This is a meeting meant to help answer your questions because everybody's situation is different. So some of the things that will be answered, we have kind of some bulleted questions here. These would all be answered during that checkup. Everything that we just talked about with Medicare and with your FEHB, that's going to probably be more of a focus, I'd imagine, in that meeting, as well as the tax strategy and optimization. So all of this is done through this complimentary financial checkup. And there's a QR code as well as in the bottom corner, there's also a link that you can go to get to that. The last quick piece that I'll leave you with, if anybody does go look for an advisor, we have 3 pieces of advice that you want to do. Number one, you want to do a background check. It's essentially an advisor's resume. If they have any strikes against them, not just in the financial industry, but if they were to get a DUI or have a drug record or anything like that, it's going to pop up on brokercheck.finra.org. If they had customer complaints, whether they won the complaint or not, it's going to pop up there. In addition, you can check for certifications. You want to look to make sure that they have something more than just their licenses. Myself, I have a chartered federal employee, or sorry, chartered mutual fund counselor designation. I have ongoing education to keep up to date with different continuing education requirements. And there is a fiduciary obligation on me to do so. There are plenty of other designations in the financial advisor career field. So you want to make sure that you look at what they are, what the requirements are, and is that somebody that's going to essentially be at a higher standard for you. The final piece, do they have a background in federal employees? We are not the only company that does this, but there is a limited amount. Most of them are smaller. You don't want to be the one educating the advisor on your benefits. You want them to be educating you. So if you say your TSP or your FEGLI or FEHB, and they say, what's that? You might want to move on to the next one. So with that, I want to thank everybody here for joining today. I hope everybody learned something, and we have the registration link again for that one-on-one. And now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. But thank you all for staying on the line. I really appreciate everybody's time, and I will go ahead without further ado and jump over to your questions. So question number one, if I continue working after beginning to take Social Security at my retirement age, will my Social Security payment increase and adjust to what I continue to earn between that age and 70? The answer would be no. Once you begin collecting, you're only going to receive the cost of living adjustments, but your additional earnings power would not increase that benefit. The other factor as well that you'll want to consider, if you take it the year that you reach your full age, as I mentioned, you're limited in how much you can earn. It was about 55K, and your benefit will be reduced $1 for every $3 that you earn above that. One other thing I'll quickly mention about the checkup. There's some of the areas and a couple other presentations we've done for some other agencies. A lot of the tax planning that is covered during that session is quite timely. So the calendars for the advisors are filling up quite quickly. So if you have, more tax related questions that you'd like to, have looked at ahead of tax time, that would be something I would say you might want to schedule that sooner than later so that you can get on the calendar before tax time. The next question, if you take Social Security and earn money, will the reduced rate stay that amount or go up to the full amount when you turn 67, for example? So great question. So when you take it early, you're limited to earn about 20,000, and then any income that you earn above that will reduce your Social Security benefit $1 for every $2 you earn above that. Now, this will recalibrate each year, but simply put, if you were going to stunt your benefit for 1 year or 2 years, you might be better off not collecting it all and waiting to collect it until you don't plan to work or have money, or you're in that full retirement age. So yes, it would go back up in that case, but if that's going to be the case for you, you're actually probably better off waiting to do that until the future. Next question, is there much difference if you retire at, say, 69 years and 7 months and at 70 years of age? As far as retirement with your federal benefits, no, there's not going to be a significant difference. It'll be, a factor of 5 months of your pension, which would probably be 1.1% of your high three. So that would be just, about 0.5% more. And you could still, wait to take Social Security till 70 in either case, depending on your situation. But no, there's not going to be a huge difference there. As far as Social Security goes, if you took it at 69 and 7 months and 70, you don't get that final 8% bump to your Social Security until you turn 70, until you have that birthday. So if that's what you're referring to, yeah, you won't get that 8% Social Security bump until your 70th birthday. My Social Security estimates assume I would work up till I start taking Social Security. How would I estimate my benefits if I plan on retiring earlier and not working, say, 62? Is there any straightforward calculation? Great question. Unfortunately, there is not a very straightforward calculation, but Social Security does have a calculator on their website where you can go in and put your income from each year, and you can pull that from your Social Security record of what they have for your income for each year, and you can plug that into their calculator to figure out what that would be. So there are resources on the Social Security website, Tom, to help you calculate that. Next question. If I'm under 70 and collecting Social Security and working, how often is my monthly benefit updated on new earnings? Um, if you are already collecting, you're not going to receive the increases each year because you're already collecting. You would get the cost of living adjustments, but those increases are only for those who are not collecting Social Security yet. So it's not dependent on whether or not you're working, but it's dependent on when you begin filing. Next question. I'm 70 and I've been receiving my full benefits at 60. I was born in 1953. I haven't retired yet, so my benefits will go up after I retire to cover those, or I guess the question is, will my benefits go up after I retire to cover those additional years that I worked and collected benefits? Because you have already been collecting, it's already going off of that record amount of when you began filing. Next question is, I'm not sure I understand what you meant by break even in the chart. Can you explain? So essentially what the break even point is if somebody took Social Security at 62 or 67 or 70, and they took all the money that they collected and put it in a bank account, right, to save that money, when would they have the same amount, right? In other words, when would you have received the same amount of money from Social Security Administration? So if you took it at 62 or 67, you're going to have the same amount at 78 years old. That's when those bank accounts would match. And then every month after that, the person who waited until 67 would be continuing to collect a higher monthly benefit than the person who took it at at 62. If you did 67 versus 70, that break-even point was 83. Next question was, your screen showed a 30% penalty for Joyce. What makes this apply? The 30% penalty in that John and Joyce scenario with Social Security was because Joyce began collecting her own Social Security at 62. So at her full age, she would get 100% of her own benefit. But at 62, right, 5 years earlier, it's going to be penalized. And that's where we come up with the 30% penalty there. My ex-husband and I were married for more than 10 years prior to him passing. He did remarry. I'm 65 years old. Can I apply for spousal survivor benefits? Yes, you can. So whether he remarried or not does not impact you as long as you did not remarry. So if you're 65 and he is deceased, you actually, as of age 60, were able to apply for a spousal benefit or spousal survivor benefit. And essentially what you're able to do is you're able to delay taking your own benefit until 70. So you can collect that portion of his. I think you can even retroactively get paid from the past 5 years where you weren't collecting. And then you can start your own benefit at 70 when yours has, of course, grown and accumulated and become larger. Is there a time frame for Social Security earning corrections? No, there's not, but I would highly recommend trying to do it on the earlier side, especially before you start collecting. That way you're collecting as much of a benefit as you are able to. Um, have a scenario that's a little bit more personalized and detailed. So the wife is a teacher and her Social Security will be impaired by the windfall exemption. I'm 68 and plan to draw my Social Security at 70. However, if her spousal benefit would be higher than what she's pulling on her own, she could claim that. So yes, she could. However, the windfall would still apply to a spousal benefit. So it would still really drag down that number. Um, in that case, that's a specific case where I would actually contact Social Security Administration and have them run an analysis for you on which of the two benefits would be larger. And if you were to do that checkup here that we have, that's something that we could look more into and be able to provide a little bit more context and detail for. Is Medicare Part B cheaper than federal health insurance? Um, it's it's pretty comparable, but your federal health insurance would be the better option of the two if you were going to be picking one. And let's not forget that the federal government continues to pay 75% of your federal healthcare premium for the rest of your life. Part B does adjust. And essentially, Part B is something that you would take as an additional factor on top of the federal health care to have you potentially more so fully covered. What is considered home health care under Medicare? It's definitely not in-home nursing care. It essentially covers somebody for a short period of time who is unable to leave their home, essentially, to go to a facility. And I believe that was a 60-day window before co-insurance needed to kick in. So as far as Medicare goes, if you retire, start paying for Part B, and then decide to go back to work, can you stop paying Part B until you retire again? Very good question. It depends on where you go back to work and if you are going to be covered from that employer under their healthcare plan. If you retire from the government and take Part B and then you go work for a private company, but you're staying on your federal healthcare plan, then no, you actually would have to maintain Part B during that time if you didn't want to incur any penalties. My retired spouse is turning 65 this year and is covered by my federal employee health benefit. Do I understand correctly that he must apply for Part A but can wait for Part B without penalty until I also retire and apply for Medicare? So your spouse who's 65, they can and should enroll for Part A. They are not required to. In my opinion, there's no reason not to. And because they're 65 or will be 65, they can enroll for Part A. For Part B, they don't have to enroll until 8 months from the time that you retire from the government. So it does not apply to when you take Medicare. It is solely based off of your official retirement date. And that's what will trigger the 8 month window for when they have to be enrolled before they would have penalties. And again, you don't have to take Part B, but if you do, then you would need to enroll within that 8 month window. Great question. Can we take Part A and not B? Yes, you absolutely can. About half of the people that I work or speak with do not end up taking Part B. They just maintain their federal plan and take Part A because the premiums were going to potentially be too high or didn't cover the doctors they like with Part B. So yes, you can take Part A and not B. Do required minimum distributions include annuities? If they are retirement traditional IRA annuities, yes, it does. The 25% penalty for missing required distributions is what? Is it 25% of, it's going to be the amount that you were forced to take out that year. So an example, somebody with $1 million account is going to have to pull out about $40,000. If they miss it in a given year, that's going to be a $10,000 penalty. Are we notified to take the RMD required distribution prior to imposing any penalties? No. You may get some kind of reminder from TSP or wherever you may have your accounts. It is not required of any banking or institutions. It is something that is your responsibility every year to make sure that that has been taken care of. There are automatic required distribution services that you can enroll for that TSP and other banks and locations have. It's just your job to set it up initially, and then they will calculate and take it out for you each year. You mentioned if one has TRICARE, Part B is required. Assume that for the calculation for how much Part B will cost, also takes into account military retirement income. So Social Security, pension, required distributions, and military retirement income, yes, it accounts for all of your income. Whatever your modified adjusted gross income is going to count into that Part B calculation. So this is why doing this tax planning and trying to really get down your required distribution is going to be so important, is that impact that you'll see to the Medicare Part B premium. And I have a couple of thank yous, so you're very welcome. Again, I appreciate everybody for attending. I will just kind of quickly mention again that the PowerPoint slides in the recording are going to be sent to all of you. It will include some of this Q&A as well, so if you wish to hear some of these questions after the fact, you're more than welcome to. Somebody also just asked, did I hear correctly that we can opt to not take Part B and just take Part A in federal employee health benefits? Yes, you can. It's only those on TRICARE or certain programs where they're required to take Part B, but the regular federal employee health benefit does not require you to take Part B. I'm retired military and get my health care from the VA hospital. Do I need to get Part B? If you guys are under TRICARE for life, then TRICARE, when you turn 65, does require Part B to be collected. Question on where do I schedule an appointment? So we have a QR code up on the screen right now, or a link on the website. You can just go to that link. You'll ask you a few questions, and it will get you scheduled for a complimentary checkup to essentially address and answer any of your questions. Can Social Security be taken if you are still working beyond your retirement age, and will it be reduced? You can definitely take it beyond your retirement age. And if we look at 68 onwards, or the year following your full age, there are no more penalties. So if your full age was 67, if you started Social Security when you turn, let's say 68, it doesn't matter how much money you earn, you're not going to have any of those reductions or penalties to your Social Security benefit. Great question. I already answered that one. Okay. If my husband began to receive disability at age 60 and has now reached his full retirement age at 67, or sorry, 66, but I am not retired yet and am the higher earning, can he receive my value now? He can, but what you would need to do is file something called a restricted application, where you essentially file for Social Security and then say, hey, but actually I don't want to start it just yet. And at that point, he'd be able to take the spousal benefit. And you would only do this if half of your benefit is greater than his own. So you'd want to kind of compare and contrast those numbers to see if that makes sense. Is there a large financial gap if you don't take Part B? No. Honestly, if you take Part B, if you don't take Part B, first off, your federal employee health plan has a max out of pocket anyways. Where you would see a financial, gap between the two is if you had some kind of illness that was a long ongoing type thing. That's where you could start to see those healthcare costs start to kind of rack up compared to if you had Part B. But Part B more or less is there for peace of mind that you're not going to have this big, large medical emergency expense in retirement that's going to wipe out a lot of your plans and change your retirement picture. I think I mentioned this a few times. How can I see a recording of this seminar? We're going to be sending out the seminar and a copy of the slides here within the next 24 hours. I want to retire this summer. I turned 65 in October. Should I just hold off on applying for Social Security after I turn 65? It's really going to depend. A lot of people, it's better to kind of wait till your full age to kind of, more so maximize that benefit. But there's a lot of different factors that go into that. This one's going to be a little bit more specific to your case. So I would just say, if you did the checkup, we could definitely address that and give you an answer when we can kind of look at numbers and more about your situation. But to be more broadly speaking, I would probably wait to take it until you're full age and just use portfolio or other assets to supplement your pension to cover your expenses in the meantime. I'm a federal employee and will turn 66 in 8 months in May 2025. When can I earn as much as I want after my Social Security retirement age without it being affected? Great question. So the answer for you, Christine, is going to be January 2026. At that point, it doesn't matter how much you earn, but what I would suggest so that you get the next increase is that you would wait until your 68th birthday. And that's when I would begin collecting, because that way you'll get that boost to your benefit from 66 in 8 months up to that higher amount. And at that point, it doesn't matter how much you earn. I'm 66 and will be 67 in December. My spouse just turned 65 in October last year. Neither of us have started collecting. Should he start? I'm a full-time Fed for approximately 4 more years. This is unfortunately another one that's going to be very specific to looking at the numbers, because there's more than just your ages and retirement plans. It also matters about your assets, the tax planning, if you're going to be taking Medicare. It's also going to be based off your family history and your health to really determine that. So I'd say the same thing. If you do the checkup, we could definitely give you an answer for that. But otherwise, it's still a little too broad or high level to really be able to give context there. As far as when he should start or you. For most people, I recommend full age. Unless they have health concerns or issues, then I would recommend earlier, depending on the case. If my husband began to receive disability at 60 and has now reached his full retirement age for Social Security at 66, actually, I believe we answered this one already. He can, but you would have to file the restricted application. So yeah, that's the same question. We already answered that one. I'm also collecting. Okay. Do you need to request or apply for the wraparound benefit from your FEHB plan? Yes, you do. So it's your job to basically say, hey, I'm also on Medicare in order for you to get that kind of reimbursement. And the main thing here is that you don't need them to cover the same 80% that they're currently covering, because Medicare Part B would. So yes, you do need to apply for that. And essentially during open season, you would choose a plan specifically, notating that you would have Part B. How do I decide whether to take Part B? So it's going to really depend, Christopher, on your situation specifically. As far as income and things is going to be the first factor. The secondary factor is going to be your health and family history. And then the third is going to be your assets and ability to self-fund that cost, coupled with your federal employee health benefit plan or adding Part B. Um, so it's going to be, as you can tell, a few layers here. The checkup, we could obviously answer that for you because we'd ask for some numbers and things to be able to have context to help you. But those would be the three main things I'd look at. If someone is 65, married and separated, are they able to withdraw their spouse Social Security if they're still working? So someone is 65, they're married. And when you say separated, you mean like divorcing? Because if that's the case, um, it's really not going to be until officially divorced. Um, as far as just looking at Social Security, if you're married and one of them is separated from work, then yes, they would file a restricted application. And even if your spouse is still working, you'd be able to collect Social Security off of their record. As far as Social Security, it would just be the question is there a main phone number or email to call Social Security when you have individual questions while filling out forms online? It would just be whatever they have on the website, unfortunately. If my spouse delays spousal benefit until full age, the spousal benefit is 50%. Can the spouse still get 100% of own benefits at 70? Great question. No, they cannot. So if your spouse takes a spousal benefit off of your record, they cannot actually go switch then and go collect their own. That used to be allowed, and back in 2016 or 17, they actually got rid of that. So no, once they begin collecting, that's going to be it. So they're either collecting half of yours or they're collecting their own, whatever's greater. So we had a question. The federal government pays 75% of our health insurance for the rest of our lives. Did I hear that correctly? Yes. For you and potentially your spouse in certain circumstances, most circumstances, the government continues to pay 75% of your health care. So they are already doing that while you're working. But yes, throughout retirement, they continue paying that. I plan on keeping my federal health insurance in retirement. Does Part B cover copays for prescriptions? Also, I've heard less and less medical providers accept Medicare. So what is the real benefit of Part B? It is true that it is a little bit more difficult for healthcare providers to collect money from Medicare. So you'll want to make sure that your doctors or facilities accept it. I would also not base it off of a particular doctor because your doctor could retire, right? Or they could leave and get a new job. So you don't want to not take Part B because one specific doctor doesn't accept it. But if it applies to the masses of your doctors or the facility you go to, then you might consider that. Um, Medicare does have Part D. D is in David, like myself. Part D is the Medicare add-on that covers things around prescriptions. So Part B does not cover that. And your federal health care also probably covers a portion of it, depending on your plan. So you need to kind of price out depending on certain medications and things that you have. That could be another component that would dictate what you do. If I'm currently receiving Social Security benefits, but I realize I'm eligible to receive spousal benefits from my husband who's still working and not currently drawing, can I change? I am not 100% sure about that. I believe once you've started collecting that would be the case. But potentially you'd be able to pay back money in order to make a change. So I would contact Social Security and see what can be done there. My mom is 67, but only has 36 credits. Can she begin collecting Social Security? So no, unless maybe your dad or another partner had a record that she could collect a benefit off of, you are required to have 40 credits. This could mean going back to work. 36 isn't too far off from 40. That could mean going back to do some kind of job for 1 year in order to be eligible to have that 40 credits. Um, just needs a job that is, paying into that, into Social Security in order for that. Why must TRICARE recipients apply for Part B? I couldn't tell you the specific reason why they do that. I believe it has to do with the cost that essentially TRICARE is paying, but it is a requirement for Part B for TRICARE. How do you opt out of Part B? Do you submit a form to Medicare? So Part B, you do not simply automatically enroll in. It is your job to apply for it. So if you don't want to opt into Part B, you don't have to opt out. You just simply would not apply for it. We have TRICARE and have to take Part B. Do people cancel TRICARE and use the federal plan when retiring? I've heard of some people doing this, but what I would say is TRICARE tends to be a better plan than the Federal Employee Health Benefit, the FEHB plan. If you were in a case where your Medicare premium was going to be so high, that would probably be the only time that I would really take that into consideration in doing. Otherwise, I would keep the TRICARE and Medicare Part B combination. So the decision to pay for Part B is mostly dependent upon whether the premiums are too high and whether you have a lot of health issues generally. Yes, exactly. Whether you have a lot of health issues now or you have a strong family history of having health issues or the premiums are too high, those would be the three reasons that you would potentially take it or not take it. Does disability count towards income for the distribution? No, disability is not going to be taxable income, and that's not going to count against you for the distribution. So disability is not a taxable kind of piece there. A few other thank yous. You guys are all welcome. I appreciate everybody who stuck around throughout all these questions. Again, we should be hopefully doing some more sessions for your agency, and we have a lot of other presentation topics. We also do a monthly market commentary as well on our website. You can find more information there. The complimentary session, as you can see, there's a QR code as well as a website link right here. I will try to just answer a couple more questions, but we are getting we're actually past time here. So I don't think I'm going to have too much more time to answer these, but if you signed up for those meetings, we would definitely be able to answer more questions there. Any advice on Part C and D? D really is just if you have a lot of prescriptions. Most people are really just going to be enrolled for Part A and B. It's more niche cases, whether you take C and D. At 73, what is the RMD basis? It's based off of how much money you have in your traditional assets, whether it's traditional TSP, traditional IRA, old employer plans, traditional annuities, all of that counts. Is there a fee for the initial consultation? No, there is not. The consultation is complimentary. It's kind of part of our seminar package. And the intention is to be able to apply the information today, as well as some other items to your situation. So no, there's not a fee for the initial consultation. For the initial consultation, there's going to be a questionnaire to fill out, which will give us basic context on your situation. And that's going to essentially be able to help us give advice. It's really up to you as far as how detailed you want to make it. The one thing I would kind of say about the information is the quality of the information you can give us will proportionately dictate the quality of the advice that we're able to give you. Last few questions here is how long do you have to work for the federal government for them to pay 75%? So I think there's a confusion here. They're not going to pay 75% of your Part B. They're not going to pay anything of your Part B. They're going to pay 75% of your federal employee health benefit, your FEHB, which is what you're currently enrolling for. At age 75, can I transfer to a Roth IRA? Yes. We have clients doing Roth conversions into their 80s and even 90s. So yes, you can definitely still do a Roth conversion. There's a lot of layers that you'll want to, of course, make sure that you're factoring in when you move money, because whatever you move is taxable. It adds to your income, adds to your Medicare premiums potentially. So you'll want to kind of customize each year how much you move. Is the Social Security payment increases 8% a year? Is that prorated per month? No, it goes off of years. So 68, 69, 70, each of those respective years is when you get that increase. So it's not going to go off of month. Great question. Once you sign up for Part B, can you opt out later? Yes, you can cancel Part B, but if you cancel it, the same thing is going to apply with those penalties. If you did decide, hey, actually, no, I want to jump back on that, it's going to be a 10% penalty per year that you were not enrolled. If you have multiple IRAs, is the required distribution required for each? Yes. Now, technically, you can take all of the distributions from one particular IRA, but the required distribution is essentially the aggregate of all of your accounts. So if you have $1 million spread out in 5 locations, the IRS is just going to say, hey, you have to take 40K out, and it's up to you to determine which place you want to take it from. It could even be all from one location, but you have to take it in total of the aggregate of all of your IRA balances. Okay, I think we answered a lot of these. I turned 59 this year. Should I convert to a Roth IRA now? So if it's TSP money you're referring to, it's going to be 59 and a half. So when you turn 59 and a half, that's when you can withhold taxes. That's also when you can move money out of TSP, which is required in order to do a Roth conversion. But I would say yes, we have this year and next year with the lower tax rates to create that opportunity to do so. Have a great comment here. Thanks very much. Retiring seems like a chess game, lots of strategy. Yes, yes, there is. It is a big game of Tetris to put all the pieces together. And fortunately, it's confusing, which is why I have a job. But unfortunately, it makes it very difficult to take that next step after a full working career and feeling confident in doing so. My spouse and I are covered under TRICARE. He'll turn 65 in 3 years before I do. Will you have to pay for Part B and TRICARE Prime? Yes, you will. So once he turns 65, he would need to enroll for Part B, not you. You wouldn't need to enroll for Part B until you turn 65. But he would see that, change in premium. I'm a federal employee and will turn 66 in 8 months. May 20. I actually recall answering this one already. So I think we are through all the questions. And I also had one comment on a misspelling, and I appreciate that feedback. I'll definitely take a look at that slide and update that. So thank you for pointing that out. Everybody who stuck around, all 83 of you, I really appreciate you sticking around. There's a lot of questions and talking. I need some water now. Um, but if you have any other questions, feel free to let us know. We should be doing hopefully more presentations for your agency. So hope to see you on future ones. The only ask I would have is if you enjoyed today, that you would just share this with your colleagues, the recording or presentation, and just let them know to maybe join our next one. So thank you all. Hope you have a great afternoon or day, and hope to see you guys in either a meeting or a future presentation. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.